Hey everyone, I don't know why I'm writing this here. Maybe it's because I feel like I've got no one left to talk to. Or maybe it's because I need strangers to tell me I'm not crazy. But I've got to get this off my chest. Let me back up a bit. Emily and I have been married for 8 years. We met at a fundraiser for animal shelters. I know. Picture perfect meet cute, right? She was standing by the dessert table, holding a tiny piece of cheesecake like it was the most precious thing in the world. We got to talking, and the rest was history. Over the years, we built a life together that, to everyone else, looked like a dream. Big house in the suburbs, vacations to Hawaii, dinner parties with friends. She was my best friend, my partner in everything. Or at least, I thought she was. Fast forward to last Saturday night. Emily throws this huge surprise party for my 40th birthday. The house was packed with friends and family, people I hadn't seen in years. She'd gone all out, caterers, decorations, even a live band. She worked the room like a pro, all smiles and laughter, making sure everyone was having a good time. If there were an Olympic medal for hosting, Emily would have taken gold. After the cake was cut and everyone had sung "Happy Birthday," Emily grabbed the microphone. "Okay, everyone," she said, grinning like the cat who swallowed the canary. "I've put together a little surprise for David. A video montage of our life together. Your best moments, honey." The crowd cheered, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. It was such a thoughtful gesture. Or so I thought. The video started innocently enough. Our wedding day, vacations, goofy moments at home. Then, about 5 minutes in, the screen flickered, and suddenly there was Emily. But not our Emily. This Emily was kissing a man who wasn't me. At first, I thought it was a joke. A poorly timed prank. But then it clicked. This wasn't staged. This wasn't funny. This was real. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Emily lunged for the remote, her face pale as death. "Oh my God, no. That's not the right video," she stammered, scrambling to turn it off. But the damage was done. I felt like the floor had opened up beneath me, and I was falling into some dark, bottomless pit. Everyone was staring. At me, at her. At the frozen image of her locked in an intimate kiss with some guy I'd never seen before. My mom covered her mouth with her hand. My buddy Ryan muttered, "Holy shit," under his breath. Emily finally managed to shut off the video, but the silence hung in the air like a noose. I stood there, my fists clenched, my mind racing. And then, without thinking, I walked up to the TV, grabbed the remote, and calmly turned the video back on. "Let's finish it," I said, my voice ice cold. "This is too good to miss." I pressed play. My hand was steady, but inside, I was boiling over. Emily lunged toward me, her voice a frantic whisper. "David, don't. Please, let me explain." The room was still as the video rolled on. It wasn't just a kiss. The footage showed Emily and this guy. Later, I'd learn his name was Alex, at a cozy-looking restaurant, laughing and holding hands. The date stamp in the corner made my stomach churn. 3 weeks ago. The camera shifted, and suddenly they were somewhere else. His apartment? Hers? It didn't matter. They were tangled up on a couch, kissing like teenagers, her blouse half unbuttoned. The clip mercifully cut off before it got worse, but the implication was clear. My wife of 8 years was screwing around behind my back. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, "What the hell?" Emily's best friend, Harper, looked like she was about to faint. My mom got up and walked out, her face a mix of shock and pity. Emily grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "David, I swear, it's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I hissed, turning to face her. "Because it looks like you've been cheating on me. With him." I jabbed a finger at the screen, still frozen on their cozy little couch scene. She opened her mouth, probably to spin some bullshit excuse, but I didn't give her the chance. "Who is he, Emily? How long has this been going on?" She stammered, her usual composure crumbling. It was a mistake. A stupid, one-time mistake. "Bullshit," I snapped. "One-time mistakes don't get edited into highlight reels." "Who filmed this? How the hell did this end up here?" Emily's face went even paler, and for a moment, I thought she might pass out. "I don't know," she said weakly. "It must have been a mix-up." I didn't mean to. A mix-up? I cut her off, laughing bitterly. You're telling me you accidentally uploaded your affair footage to my birthday montage? That's the story you're going with? Her eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape. David, please. Can we talk about this in private? Why? So you can lie to me without an audience? I glanced around at the stunned faces of our friends and family. No, Emily. You wanted everyone here to celebrate our best moments, right? Let's give them the full picture. Emily looked like she wanted to crawl into a hole. Good. I wanted her to feel every ounce of the humiliation she just dropped on me. But before I could push further, someone else spoke up. Emily. Harper's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Is it true? Have you been cheating on David? Emily turned toward her, her lips trembling. Harper, I. Answer the question. Harper snapped, her voice rising. Is it true? Emily broke. Fine. Yes. Okay. Yes, I've been seeing someone. But it's not what you think. I stared at her, my chest tight. Not what I think. Then why don't you tell us what it is? She took a shaky breath, tears pooling in her eyes. David, I was lonely. You've been so distant lately, so caught up in work. I didn't mean for it to happen. But Alex, he was there for me when you weren't. The room erupted in murmurs. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me, waiting for my reaction. Distant? That's what she was going with. I worked long hours, sure, but it was for us. To pay for this house, these parties, the vacations she loved so much. You're blaming me? I said, my voice low and dangerous. You're saying it's my fault you're a liar and a cheat? No, I'm just saying. I wasn't happy, David. Her tears spilled over now, but they didn't move me. Not this time. And I didn't know how to tell you. So instead of talking to me, you talked to him? What did he have that I didn't, Emily? A better couch? Someone chuckled nervously, but I ignored it. Emily's face twisted with anger now, the guilt giving way to defensiveness. You don't understand. You're so wrapped up in your own world, you never notice what I need. I didn't plan this, David. It just happened. It just happened, I repeated, shaking my head. God, you really have a way with words. Do you tell Alex that too, after you accidentally end up in his bed? Her face flushed red, and for a moment, she looked like she might slap me. But before she could say anything, I turned to the room. I think this party's over. Thanks for coming, everyone. Emily and I have a lot to discuss. With that, I walked out. I left her there, standing in the ruins of her perfect party, surrounded by the wreckage she'd created. But I wasn't done with her. Not by a long shot. I left the party and drove straight to my office downtown. It wasn't where I wanted to be on a Saturday night, but I needed to think, to process what had just happened. Being in the house we'd shared felt unbearable. I poured myself a stiff drink and stared out at the city lights, the events of the evening replaying in my head. Emily, her tears, her excuses, her outright gall to blame me for what she'd done. I couldn't shake the image of that video, the way she smiled at Alex. Easy, unguarded. The kind of smile she hadn't given me in years. And then her flimsy excuse about a one-time mistake. Bullshit. I knew there was more to the story, and I was going to find out. The next morning, I drove home. The house was quiet when I walked in, though Emily's car was in the driveway. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess. She looked up when I entered, her expression a mix of guilt and fear. We need to talk, I said, my voice flat. She nodded, her eyes red-rimmed. David, I'm so sorry. Save it. I threw my keys on the counter and leaned against the wall. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to tell me everything. No lies, no sugarcoating. I want the truth. Emily hesitated, her hands trembling. I already told you. Not enough, I snapped. Who filmed that video? And how did it end up in the montage? She took a shaky breath. It was Alex. He filmed it. He thought it would be funny to keep a record of our time together. Funny? I barked out a humorless laugh. You think it's funny now? No. God, no. Her voice broke. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I don't know how it ended up in the video. I must have. I must have uploaded the wrong file by accident when I was editing. So you're saying you were editing our happy memories and decided to keep a little sizzle reel of your affair on the same device? She winced. I didn't think. That much is obvious. I leaned forward, my fists clenched. How long has this been going on? Emily hesitated again, and I could see the gears turning in her head, calculating, deciding how much to reveal. 6 months, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I let out a slow breath, my chest tight. 6 months. So while I was busting my ass at work to pay for everything you've ever wanted, you were screwing around with some coworker for 6 months. It wasn't like that, she said, her voice rising. Alex was just, he was there for me, David, when you weren't. He listened. Listened? I shook my head, incredulous. That's your justification? I didn't listen enough. So you found someone else to play house with? It wasn't about that, she cried. I didn't mean for it to happen. But you've been so distant lately, so caught up in your work and your own life. I felt like I didn't exist to you anymore. So instead of saying something, you jumped into bed with Alex, I said coldly. That's mature. Emily's face hardened. I'm not the only one to blame here, David. You've been so focused on work, on your precious career, that you forgot about us. You forgot about me. Her words stung, but I refused to let her twist this. You don't get to spin this like you're the victim, Emily. You didn't just cheat, you lied. To me, to our friends, to everyone. And now you want to sit here and blame me for it. She didn't respond, her eyes dropping to the table. I grabbed a chair and sat down across from her. We're not done. I want the whole story. How did it start? Where did it happen? Don't leave anything out. She hesitated, then started talking. Slowly, reluctantly, she spilled the details. It had started innocently, she claimed. Late nights at the office. Shared projects. One too many drinks after work. But it had escalated. Texts, secret meetings, stolen afternoons. By the time she realized she was in too deep, she said, it was too late. I didn't want to hurt you, David, she said, her voice trembling. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Yeah. I leaned back, my arms crossed. Because it looks to me like you meant it every single time you went to see him. Her tears started again, but I didn't care. I stood up, my hands on the table. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. I don't care where you go. Alex's place, a hotel, your mom's house. But you're not staying here. David, please. No, I snapped, cutting her off. You don't get to please me anymore, Emily. You made your choice. Now you live with it. She didn't argue further. She just sat there, crying softly, as I walked out of the room. I felt like a volcano ready to erupt, but I knew I needed to keep my head. This wasn't just about Emily. It was about taking back control of my life. And I was just getting started. By the time Emily finally left that night, the house felt different. Quiet, empty, but not peaceful, not yet. Her absence wasn't a comfort. It was a void, filled with the echoes of her lies and the betrayal she thought she could explain away. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent the night going through her things. No, I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for evidence, proof that what she told me wasn't even close to the full story. And I found plenty. It started with her laptop. Emily had logged out, but she wasn't nearly as tech-savvy as she thought. Recovering her deleted files was almost laughably easy. A folder buried in her desktop, labeled Work Docs, was full of pictures, texts, and videos, some of them so explicit I had to stop and catch my breath before I kept digging. Every image felt like a punch to the gut. Emily in a dimly lit hotel room. Emily lying on a beach towel with Alex's hand on her thigh. Emily in lingerie that I'd never seen before, grinning like she didn't have a care in the world. The texts were worse. Flirty banter turned to sexting, then long, heartfelt messages about how David just doesn't understand me anymore. She had painted me as some cold, distant workaholic who'd left her to wither away in a loveless marriage. That part hit me harder than I expected. Not just the cheating, though that was bad enough, but the way she'd rewritten our life together, turning me into the villain in her story. I wanted to smash her laptop against the wall, but I knew better. This wasn't about catharsis. It was about strategy. I saved everything onto a flash drive, every message, every photo, every second of video. This wasn't just fuel for the divorce, it was insurance. If Emily thought she could play the victim, I'd make sure the truth came out. The next morning, I called a lawyer. A friend of mine had gone through a nasty divorce a few years back, and he'd mentioned someone, Janine Carter, a pit bull in a power suit. Janine didn't do pleasantries when I called her. She asked for the facts, and when I told her I had evidence, she perked up. "Bring it all in," she said. "Every text, every photo, every timestamp. We're going to make sure she doesn't walk away with a dime." Emily, of course, had no idea what was coming. The next day, she texted me, begging to talk. I ignored her. Then she called. I let it go to voicemail. She tried showing up at the house, but I didn't answer the door. Instead, I watched her from the upstairs window, pacing in the driveway, looking more frazzled than I'd ever seen her. Finally, she left me a voicemail that almost made me laugh. "David, please. I know you're upset, but can we just sit down and have an adult conversation about this? I think we can work through it. I still love you, and I know, deep down, you still love me too." Love? After what she'd done. The audacity was almost impressive. That afternoon, I sent her a text. "David, we'll talk, but not about reconciliation. My lawyer will be in touch." Her reply came almost immediately. "Emily, a lawyer? Are you serious? David, don't do this. We can fix this. You don't have to throw everything away over a mistake." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I wasn't throwing anything away. She already had. The next few days were a blur of meetings and phone calls. Janine was ruthless, combing through every detail of our finances, our assets, our history. She assured me that the evidence I'd gathered would give me the upper hand, not just in terms of the divorce, but also in controlling the narrative. "People like Emily rely on perception," Janine explained, leaning back in her chair. "She's going to try to spin this, make herself look like the victim. But with what you've got, you can control the story. Don't let her get ahead of you." She was right, of course. Emily wasn't going to go down quietly, and I needed to be prepared. That's when I decided to take things a step further. I called her closest friends, Harper, Beth, and Sarah. They were three peas in a pod, always giggling over brunch or planning weekend getaways. They'd been at the party, and I knew they were already buzzing with questions about what had gone down. When I met them for coffee, their faces were a mix of curiosity and concern. "David," Harper said, her tone cautious, "what's really going on? Emily hasn't told us much, but, well, she seems really upset." "Upset?" I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, I bet she is." I didn't hold back. I showed them the evidence, enough to make it clear that Emily wasn't the woman they thought she was. The photos, the messages, the video. By the time I was done, they looked sick. I can't believe this," Beth said, her voice shaky. "She always made it sound like you were the problem, like you were too busy for her." "She's been lying to all of you," I said bluntly, "and I'm not going to let her get away with it." By the end of the week, the fallout had begun. Harper and the others stopped returning Emily's calls. Mutual friends started reaching out to me, asking questions, offering their sympathy. Emily's carefully curated image was crumbling, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the rest of her world came crashing down. I wasn't done yet, though. Alex was still out there, thinking he'd gotten away clean. That was going to change. I'd spent days focusing on Emily, but Alex had been living rent-free in my head, and it was time to evict him. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about holding both of them accountable. He wasn't some innocent bystander in all of this. He knew she was married. He chose to get involved. First, I needed to know more about him. Emily's text had given me some details. He worked with her at her firm, some middle management hotshot with a degree in marketing. The guy wasn't exactly subtle. He'd sent her messages from his work email and even included his office number in one of their where to meet exchanges. Amateur hour. With a little digging, I found his LinkedIn profile. Alex Langston. He wasn't hard to spot. Polished headshot, smug smile, and a bio that read like he thought he was the next Steve Jobs. I made a mental note of his company and job title before moving on to his social media. What I found only fueled my anger. Pictures of him posing at happy hours, captions about living his best life, and a few recent posts about overcoming challenges with resilience and integrity. Integrity? The guy was screwing another man's wife. Armed with this information, I decided to hit him where it hurt. The first step was anonymous, but effective. I created a burner email and sent his company's HR department everything I had. The video clips, screenshots of his messages with Emily, even a detailed timeline of their affair. Subject line: Professional misconduct. Alex Langston. Body: To whom it may concern, I am writing to bring to your attention some concerning behavior by one of your employees, Alex Langston. As the attached evidence shows, Mr. Langston has engaged in an extramarital affair with a married coworker, using company time and resources to facilitate this relationship. This conduct reflects poorly on your organization and may be in violation of your policies. Please review the attached materials and take appropriate action. Sincerely, a concerned party. The next step was a little more personal. I waited until Monday morning, when I knew Alex would be at work. Then I called his office line. Hello, Alex Langston speaking. Hi, Alex. This is David, I said, my tone calm but laced with venom. There was a pause. David? Sorry, I'm not sure David, I interrupted. Emily's husband. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, he spoke, his voice shaky. Look, man, I don't think. You don't think? I cut him off. You didn't think when you started screwing around with my wife? Or was that part of your grand, resilient integrity plan? David, I'm sorry, he stammered. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen? I laughed bitterly. You filmed it, Alex. You kept souvenirs. You think sorry cuts it now? I made a mistake, he said, his voice desperate. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Well, you did, I snapped. And now you're going to deal with the consequences. What do you want from me? He asked, sounding like a cornered animal. Nothing, I said coldly. I've already handled it. But you might want to start updating your resume. HR should be reaching out soon. I hung up before he could respond. The fallout hit faster than I expected. By midweek, Emily called me, furious. What did you do to Alex? She demanded, her voice sharp. I held him accountable, I said flatly. Something you clearly couldn't manage. She let out a bitter laugh. You're unbelievable. He lost his job, David. Do you know how humiliating this is for him? For me. Good, I said. You both deserve it. Her voice rose. You're just trying to ruin our lives. Can't you see how petty this is? Petty? I barked. You destroyed our marriage, humiliated me in front of our friends and family, and lied to everyone who cared about you. Don't talk to me about petty, Emily. She started to argue, but I hung up. I didn't owe her an explanation. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch, watching the sky darken. Alex was out of the picture, Emily's reputation was in tatters, and the divorce process was underway. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't expected: satisfaction. This wasn't the end of the road, but it was a damn good start. The next morning, I woke to a flood of text messages and missed calls. Harper, Beth, and even my brother Nolan had reached out. The gist of it? Emily was in damage control mode. She had taken to social media to set the record straight. Curious, I opened her profile. There it was, a long, melodramatic post accompanied by a picture of her looking teary-eyed and contrite. Emily's post. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. Mistakes are made, hearts are broken, but it's how we move forward that defines us. I never intended to hurt anyone, least of all David, the man I've loved for so many years. What happened between Alex and me was a terrible lapse in judgment during a difficult time in my marriage. I'm not proud of my actions, and I am deeply sorry for the pain I've caused. Please respect our privacy as we navigate this challenging time. The comments were a mixed bag. A few of her loyal sycophants rallied behind her, spouting cliches like, "We all make mistakes," and "You're so brave for owning up to it." But the majority? Not so forgiving. One comment from Harper hit particularly hard. Don't act like this was a moment of weakness. It was a 6-month affair. You lied to everyone, not just David. Own your actions. Others chimed in. Cheating is a choice, not a mistake. I feel sorry for David. You're the one who broke his trust. I couldn't help but smirk. Emily had played the sympathy card, but the court of public opinion wasn't buying it. That evening, I got a call from Nolan. He wasn't one for subtlety, so I braced myself. You see Emily's pity parade? He asked, his tone dripping with disdain. Yep, I replied. Classic Emily. She's spinning this like you were some absentee husband who drove her to cheat. What a load of crap. I sighed. Let her. She can say whatever she wants. I've got the evidence to prove otherwise. You thinking of going public with it? Nolan asked. The thought had crossed my mind. I wasn't the kind of guy who aired dirty laundry online, but the idea of countering her narrative was tempting. I don't know, I admitted. Feels messy. Nolan snorted. Messy? She made it messy the second she decided to let her side piece film their little rendezvous. If I were you, I'd post the damn video. I laughed despite myself. You're not wrong. Instead of going nuclear, I opted for something more subtle. That night, I posted a single sentence on my own profile. Mistakes don't last 6 months. Choices do. The response was immediate. People knew exactly what I meant. Friends, coworkers, and even distant relatives flooded my inbox with messages of support. Some were shocked, others furious on my behalf. A few offered to take Emily's post apart piece by piece. One particularly blunt message from an old college buddy read, "She's a clown, bro, good riddance." The next few weeks turned into a whirlwind of fallout. Emily's friends, the ones she'd lied to about me being distant and cold, began reaching out. Harper, especially, was livid. I can't believe I defended her, she said when we met for coffee. She told us you were ignoring her, that you didn't care anymore. But after everything you showed us, she shook her head, her face flushed with anger. I feel like such an idiot. It's not your fault, I said. She's a master manipulator. She knows how to twist things to make herself look like the victim. Well, not anymore, Harper said firmly. I'm done with her. And I'm not the only one. She wasn't kidding. Over the next few days, I heard from mutual friends who'd cut Emily off completely. She'd underestimated how much her lies would cost her. As for Alex, he wasn't faring much better. Rumors swirled that his termination from the company wasn't quiet. Word got around, and people were talking. One of my contacts at his workplace said he'd been escorted out after HR received the evidence. Apparently, he tried to downplay it, my contact said. But once they saw the video, well, there wasn't much he could say. Emily and Alex had gambled everything on their little affair. Now, they were reaping what they'd sown, and I was content to let them drown in the consequences. But this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about moving forward. And for that, I needed to take the next steps. Steps that would ensure Emily stayed out of my life for good. Emily's carefully constructed image was unraveling faster than I could have hoped. The fallout among our social circle was just the beginning. Now, it was time to tackle the legal side of things. Janine had been methodically building my case, and when we met again in her office, she laid it out in no uncertain terms. This is going to be clean-cut, she said, sliding a stack of papers across the desk. The evidence you've gathered leaves no room for negotiation. She's not entitled to spousal support, and with no kids in the picture, the division of assets will heavily favor you. I glanced through the documents. Janine had anticipated every angle Emily might try to exploit, even including a clause to protect my finances if Emily tried to drag the divorce proceedings out unnecessarily. What about the house? I asked. You keep it, she replied. If she wants to fight for it, she'll have to prove why she deserves it. And with her reputation in shambles and no financial contribution to speak of, she won't get far. It felt surreal to think about the life Emily and I had built together being dismantled piece by piece, but it also felt freeing. When Emily received the divorce papers, she didn't take it well. She called me within an hour, her voice shrill and desperate. David, what the hell is this? She demanded. It's called accountability, Emily, I said calmly. You're seriously doing this? After everything we've been through? Yes, I said, cutting her off. After everything you put me through, this is exactly what I'm doing. She tried to argue, to bargain, but I wasn't interested. The conversation ended with her sobbing into the phone, and I felt nothing but relief. The next week, I came home to find her on the front porch, her face streaked with mascara. She had a suitcase by her side, and I sighed, already knowing what was coming. "David, please," she said as I walked up the steps. "I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I still love you." I crossed my arms and looked at her, feeling a strange sense of detachment. "You love me?" I said. "You have a funny way of showing it." Tears streamed down her face as she stepped closer. "I didn't know what I was doing, okay? I was lost, and Alex, he was just a distraction. But you're my husband. You're the only one I've ever really loved." Her words rang hollow. Maybe a part of me had wanted to hear them weeks ago, but now they felt meaningless. "You're too late, Emily," I said quietly. "Whatever you think we had, you destroyed it. There's no fixing this." She stared at me, her lips trembling, and for a moment, I thought she might throw herself at me. But then something shifted in her expression, a flicker of anger beneath the tears. "You're really going to throw everything away?" she spat. "For what? To prove a point?" I leaned in, my voice low and firm. "No, Emily, I'm not throwing anything away. You did that. All I'm doing now is cleaning up your mess." Over the next few weeks, Emily tried every tactic in the book. She apologized, she begged, she raged. She even tried to rope mutual friends into her pity party, but most of them weren't interested. Harper and Beth made sure of that. Meanwhile, Alex had gone radio silent. Whatever connection they'd had was clearly severed, and Emily was left to face the consequences alone. I focused on the practicalities, signing paperwork, updating accounts, and planning for the next chapter of my life. Selling the house was an easy decision. It held too many memories, most of them now tainted. I listed it with a realtor and started searching for a place of my own. When the sale closed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This wasn't just a financial decision, it was a symbolic one. I was leaving the past behind, one step at a time. The final nail in the coffin came during our last mediation session. Emily, dressed in a sharp blazer that screamed, "Put together," sat across from me, her lawyer at her side. Janine didn't give her an inch. When it became clear that Emily had no leverage, her facade cracked. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice trembling. "I made a mistake, but I don't deserve to lose everything." Janine raised an eyebrow. "You're not losing everything, Emily. You're keeping exactly what you brought into the marriage. Unfortunately for you, that's not much." I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. By the time the session ended, Emily's signature was on every document. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. After the paperwork came through, I sent Emily a single text. "David, your things are in storage. You can arrange to pick them up." She didn't reply. I didn't care. I was free. In the days following the finalized divorce, life felt strange. Not better, not worse, just different. The silence in the house wasn't oppressive anymore. It was a clean slate. For the first time in years, I didn't have to think about anyone else's schedule, moods, or lies. The only person I needed to look after was me. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple bought it, gushing about its charm and potential, completely unaware of the history it held. I didn't care. I was just glad to be rid of it. I used the money to buy a smaller place across town, far enough to feel like a fresh start, but close enough to keep my routines intact. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, and every piece of furniture, every decoration was chosen with one goal in mind: to reclaim my space. The first night in the new house, I sat on the back deck with a beer in hand, staring at the stars. I thought about Emily, not in the aching, heartbroken way I had before, but with a kind of detached clarity. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. That's when it hit me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her, not at Alex, not even at myself. I was just done. The fallout from Emily's affair continued to ripple through our old social circle. Mutual friends who'd initially tried to stay neutral were quietly distancing themselves from her. Harper told me that Emily had been laying low, though she occasionally popped up on social media, posting vague, self-pitying captions about starting over. She's trying to rebrand herself, Harper said during one of our coffee catch-ups. But no one's buying it. Good, I said, sipping my drink. She doesn't deserve a clean slate after what she pulled. She's been asking about you, Harper added, watching me carefully, wondering how you're doing. I raised an eyebrow. Why? She doesn't get to care about me now? Harper shrugged. Guilt, maybe. Or ego. Either way, she's not your problem anymore. She was right, of course. Emily had spent months tearing me down, and I wasn't about to let her waltz back into my life with some half-assed apology. Work became my anchor. Throwing myself into projects felt good, productive. It gave me something to focus on besides the wreckage Emily had left behind. My boss noticed the change, and within a few months, I was promoted. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. Nolan dragged me to the gym one afternoon, insisting that getting ripped was the best way to move on. I rolled my eyes but went along, and to my surprise, he was right. The physical strain helped clear my head, and the progress I saw in the mirror was a reminder that I was still in control of my life. You're looking good, man, Nolan said after a particularly brutal session. Bet Emily's regretting everything now. She can regret all she wants, I said, wiping sweat from my face. Doesn't change anything. Then came the therapy. I hadn't planned on it, but Harper's gentle nudging finally wore me down. It's not about her, she said. It's about you. Processing everything, so you can actually move on. So, I went. The therapist, Dr. Kaplan, was sharp and no nonsense, which I appreciated. She didn't let me wallow or paint myself as a martyr. Instead, she pushed me to examine the cracks in my marriage, not just Emily's infidelity, but the ways we'd both failed long before Alex came into the picture. Infidelity doesn't happen in a vacuum, she said during one session. That doesn't excuse her actions, but it's important to understand the patterns that led to this point. It wasn't easy to hear, but it helped. Slowly, I stopped defining myself as the guy whose wife cheated on him. I was just David, a man with flaws, strengths, and a life still worth building. One day, while clearing out the last of my boxes, I came across an old photo album. Emily and I were smiling in most of the pictures, arms around each other, caught in moments that felt so far removed from the people we'd become. I flipped through the pages, my emotions strangely muted. When I reached the end, I closed the album and placed it in a box labeled Donate. I didn't need the reminders anymore. By the time the sun set that evening, I felt lighter. This wasn't closure. It was something better. Acceptance. The next time Emily called, I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I'd already moved on, and she was just a ghost from a chapter I'd finished writing. The future was mine again, and I wasn't looking back. A month after settling into my new life, I thought I'd finally reached the end of the storm. Work was thriving, my routine felt solid, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was genuinely moving forward. Then Emily reappeared, like a bad habit I'd finally kicked but hadn't fully purged. It started with a text. Emily, David, can we talk? Just once. I need to say some things. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the delete button. I'd made it this far without her in my life. Why should I give her the satisfaction now? Still, a part of me was curious. What could she possibly say that she hadn't already? Against my better judgment, I replied. David, 1 hour. Neutral location. No games. She agreed almost immediately, suggesting a cafe downtown. I picked a different spot, an out-of-the-way diner where we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. The last thing I wanted was an audience. When I arrived, Emily was already there, sitting in a booth by the window. She looked different. Not in a bad way, necessarily, but worn. The confident, polished facade she'd always carried was gone. In its place was a woman who looked as though life had finally caught up to her. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. Let's get this over with, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She flinched but nodded, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup like it was a lifeline. I know I'm the last person you want to see right now, but I couldn't let things end the way they did. They already ended, I said flatly. What more is there to say? I just, I need you to understand, she began, her voice trembling. I never meant to hurt you. I made mistakes, terrible ones, but I wasn't trying to destroy us. I was lost, David. I didn't know how to fix things, and Alex. Don't say his name. I cut in, my eyes narrowing. He's irrelevant now. This is about you. You had choices, Emily. You chose to lie, to cheat, to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. So don't sit here and try to rewrite history. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. You're right. I did those things. And I hate myself for it. But I didn't come here to make excuses. Then why are we here? She hesitated, her lips trembling. Because I still care about you. I always will. And I need to know if there's any chance. I laughed bitterly, cutting her off. You want a second chance? After everything you did? Her tears came harder now, her voice breaking. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I regret everything. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. Regret doesn't fix anything, I said coldly. And it doesn't erase what you've done. You didn't just cheat, Emily. You burned our life to the ground and walked away without a second thought. There's no coming back from that. She reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. David, please. I'm not asking for everything. Just a chance to show you I can be better. I pulled my hand back, leaning away from her. You already showed me who you are, Emily. I believe you. Now you need to live with it. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the texts, the videos, the lies she told to justify her actions. Whatever pain she felt now, it was nothing compared to what she put me through. I'm done, I said firmly, standing up. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but it's not me. I didn't wait for her reply. As I walked out of the diner, I felt a strange sense of finality. Whatever part of me had held on to anger, sadness, or even hope was gone. She was just another chapter in a story I'd already closed. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of bourbon, staring at the stars. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the fallout, the unexpected turns my life had taken since that night at the party. I realized something that felt almost like peace. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Emily, not at Alex, not at myself. She had tried to make amends, to rewrite the ending of our story, but it didn't matter. I'd already written my own ending. This was my life now, and I wasn't looking back. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.